You might say treated religion with benign neglect. It simply didn't address it. It wasn't fitting. It didn't fit in because it wasn't scientific. It could not be measured. And then in humanistic psychology, the focus came back onto people, their experience, beginning to perhaps consider spiritual values, but not as something essential and not necessarily included. The distinct feature of Assagioli's approach and understanding was to place spiritual values, spiritual experience right at the center of life itself. Life was based in spiritual energy in Assagioli's understanding. So this brings us to the actual diagram of this. I think will begin to make things a bit clearer. And I think I can scroll right down to that. And let's take a look very briefly here. Assagioli speaks of the self as a point of consciousness and will. And we will look very briefly at that. But here, this is something that will be covered more in depth in meeting number 2. Just as he took the notion of the psyche and came up with various levels and functions, he also broke down the idea of the will into several aspects: the strong will, skillful will, the good will, transpersonal will, along with a number of different qualities used by the will. And then finally, looking at a particular act of will. And here you're thinking of, say, a large-scale project that you might be involved with, be it in school, at work, or even a major project you're trying to do at home. He broke down the stages of that into the aim or goal, the stage of deliberation, the affirmation, and then the actual plan and program and the direction. So that's all. You don't need to be writing that down. It's just an indication of the depth to which he went into this. And here's an interesting statement he made, I think, that we can indicate psychosynthesis above all as a movement, a tendency, a goal that translates into an attitude and a slow conquest towards organization. And this is the practice of psychosynthesis that begins with the awareness of the self. And then the goal is an organization of those parts of the personality. And then with that well-organized and well-functioning personality, that's when he moves into the integration of the well-ordered personality with spiritual values and the spiritual self. So let's go to the diagram. And this, for, I think, obvious purposes, came to be known as the egg diagram. And the first thing you'll notice is it's divided horizontally into 3 levels. These are the levels of the unconscious. There's a circle here, which is the field of consciousness. That's whatever you're conscious of at any given point. In the center of the field of consciousness is the personal self, the I, a point of consciousness and will. And at the top, right on the border between, this is the personal psyche here, all that's beyond us, beyond you. And right on the border is the transpersonal self. And you'll see these are dotted lines. This indicates the connection between the two. And all of these lines, they're not solid lines. These are not impermeable barriers. The information can move from one level to another. And this first level is the lower unconscious, which includes what Freud described, which is primarily repressed contents due to some traumatic event, usually early in life. It's also where you would find the automatic functions of the body, all the processes of digestion, circulation of the blood, breathing, all the things that go on without any conscious intervention or any conscious use of the will. The middle level here, the middle unconscious, this is, I think, a fairly easy one to grasp. This is all the content, the information that, although it's not currently within your field of consciousness, you can readily bring it to consciousness. Your phone number, your address as a child if you moved, perhaps the address where you spent a vacation or even repeated vacations. And that content wouldn't be simply a list of an address. That would include your memories of experiences you had at that vacation place, wherever it might have been. But these are all things that you can readily bring to consciousness. Then the third level is the higher unconscious, or superconscious, or transpersonal consciousness. They're all referring to the same thing. And this is not simply where you would find spiritual values. And by spiritual, he would also mean things like the sense of altruism and a feeling of being called to that, to act upon that. But also sort of higher levels of thinking, like abstract mathematics. It's also the source within the psyche of imagination and the source of intuition. So again, all of these are permeable barriers. Things can move between them. And this is, in effect, a two-way street here. There are occasions when a spiritual experience may simply come into consciousness. And there are other times, starting from the personal self, and this would get into later, excuse me, some of the exercises and techniques used within psychosynthesis, starting from the point of the self, it's reaching up to the higher self to achieve connection with that material. So that is the nature of the self in a nutshell, or I guess I should say in an eggshell. And from here, we can proceed to an exercise or two. Assagioli presented psychosynthesis not to become a published book and sell books, or even to become a school of thought, but the purpose was to experience it. Without the actual experience of it, it just remains as another abstract bit of information. So we can move from this. I guess I could take a moment if there's any particular questions anyone wanted to bring up at the moment, or we will proceed to the exercise section. Okay. Well, this first exercise.
Maria has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Richard, I saw that number 7 is collective consciousness. Is that what that is outside the self?
Oh, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Outside of the egg, if you like, I'll bring that back up again. Okay. Outside is what 7 is. It's everything outside. And this would be the collective unconscious in the sense that Jung described it. Archetypes, if you will. This level 1, the lower unconscious, this is personal to each of us, to your life. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, which is sort of hard to grasp. How can this be? I do not have an explanation for the how, but he spoke of, in essence, a racial consciousness that goes back for centuries and centuries. And often, if you were to connect to this, it wouldn't come so much as a memory, the way you have memories that you may have way in the past that are difficult or not even capable of being brought forward. It exists often in symbolic form. That's sort of what an archetype is. But essentially, this outside the egg is everything and anything that's outside. And no one can give you a description of what that is. But there is a beyond. Now, when Assagioli talks of the transpersonal self, he is talking about something that is beyond, in the sense that it is beyond the individual. But it is not something that is completely other. It is something to which you are very much connected. So he posits spiritual values while he does not attempt to describe he doesn't try to draw you a picture. He does say it is a spiritual source of being that is not simply beyond, and he doesn't want you to think beyond meaning completely different and other. It's something very much connected to you at your most central part of your existence, if that clears anything up. But this, and I still don't know that I could say exactly what is an archetype. But our friend Mr. Jung did and wrote several books on it. But that's all I can say. You are here, but you are connected. This is you also. This is not something different. Transpersonal self is not some other thing. In fact, he often described the personal self as a reflection of the transpersonal self. This is really you in purest and fullest sense. And again, the point and approach of psychosynthesis, starting from becoming aware and then experiencing this understanding, and then working on the basic personality to become capable of choosing what you're thinking of and even choosing your actions. And then at the point you have that well-developed, well-rounded personality, seeking to connect more and more with the transpersonal self, so that now the choices that you make, the focus that you have in your life is not simply about you. It's connecting to others, which is the other point. Assagioli does not present this as a means for an individual to be connected to God, and now you're done. In that connection also involves others, because you're not the only one connected to the source of being. And there's point and purpose to these other people that you come into contact with. And the point being to recognize that connection. First of all, you have to recognize it. You have to accept it, choose it, and choose to consciously work on developing that connection to others. Not just a connection upward, but upward and outward at the same time. Now you're getting someplace on the voyage. So I'm glad you caught that, Marita. I had neglected to say anything about that at all.
I just have a comment here, which I'm not, unfortunately, going to be able to elaborate upon. But when I saw the image of the egg, it struck me as an image that I saw when I was studying Kabbalah, and
Ooh,
very
well,
similar. The top
yeah,
would be the Keter, the divine crown, and
yeah.
of course the middle level is the human consciousness, and at the base is the Yasad, which is the foundation, and Shekinah, God's presence in the world. There was a lot more to it, and it was several years ago, but it just struck me.
Well, it also struck, I can't think of her name, but there's a book I picked up a couple years back. Every time I do a presentation involving psychosynthesis, I wind up ordering a couple more books. And this particular author, well, actually, she went to see someone at one point who was, I guess, casting is the word, the I Ching. And he told her of this voyage that she was about to embark on, which she later realized was her voyage into the practice of psychosynthesis. And she had an image that came to her, and it was the psychosynthesis egg superimposed on the tree of life from the Kabbalah as
Right.
one picture. So someone perhaps a bit more advanced than I am, if he were here, would say, aha, there is your example of the collective unconscious. This was an image that came to this author, and it also came to you. And that's an example of the collective unconscious. That's where that image is of,
Just curious as to
you know,
whether Assagioli studied Kabbalah.
I didn't get that. The last thing you said.
It makes me curious as to whether or not Assagioli studied Kabbalah and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
thus the image.
Absolutely. He was well aware. I mean, he had just a very eclectic, most expanded fields that he went into to come up with this. I mean, and he would say he didn't so much discover this as put it together from various sources that were already there. They're already there. He didn't sit down and create the idea that this is the psyche. He, he found, you know, one of the things that he always insisted upon was that his psychosynthesis was the result of a scientific investigation. And as I mentioned earlier, with Freudian thinking and behaviorism, oh no, religion, spirituality, that we can't talk about that because we're scientists. Well, he noticed these various sources of people across time, across countries, all in different religions, and they're all describing a state of consciousness. And he says that's a fact. That's a fact. These people did describe this. And if you read them, they're describing the same thing. That's a fact. They also described changes that came about in their life after this deep spiritual experience. Call it cosmic consciousness, call it what you will. They experienced it and something changed. Those are facts. They can be observed. So he says, science is, first of all, a way of understanding things. So here it is. Here's something to be understood. And not to go too far afield, back to the four forces of psychology, the fourth one being transpersonal psychology. He spoke of what he thought might become the fifth force, which he called psychoenergetics. And it was already known at the time. He's saying this, say, in the 60s and early 70s. It's already known that there were electrical currents that you could actually notice in the brain. And I can remember from long before I ever even heard of psychosynthesis, I believe, but maybe later in the 70s, studies that were being done, I guess this would be around the 70s, where they could put some little contraption on your head with wiring, and it could pick up the electrical activity in the brain, and they could see a distinct difference in the patterns, depending upon whether you're simply sitting there, perhaps sitting there reading a book, or perhaps standing up and down, doing a little physical exercise. And when you're asleep, and again, during people would meditate. And each one of these different states of activity would result in a different electrical activity from the brain. So he was thinking someday, perhaps the equipment will be there. We can get a lot more detailed in this. And, you know, the belief that there is a spiritual energy as such is a reasonable thought. You know, he thought this fits with scientific thinking. And one of the first generation of students that became an instructor under Assagioli, his name escapes me, James Varju, I think might be it. But the point being, he was an engineer, so used to thinking along those lines. And he wrote extensively a number of articles, and I believe a book, even trying to create the beginning of what he thought the laws of psychic energy would look like. And he thought they would have to pattern the laws of energy as we know it already. So a lot to think about.
Richard, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I taught a course in William James's work, Varieties of Religious Experience, and I think there's some parallel in his work in doing his work on mysticism.
Yes.
He
Yeah,
studied mysticism
definitely.
in many different cultures, and he felt there were a lot of commonalities across cultures and across traditions. So I think
William James is one of the prominent people Assagioli mentions as
Oh,
prominent that led him along the path to his discoveries. Definitely, William James and the variety of religious experiences.
right.
James also, he said that that became part of his understanding of what he called subpersonalities. James talked about the roles that people play in their life, social roles primarily. And Assagioli spoke of subpersonalities, which the way to think of it is, first of all, roles that you have that could be parent or child or spouse or partner, or a role in your job. And it becomes, in effect, well, a subpersonality. It's a way of operating. And it comes with particular attitudes and ways of relating to others. And this is, this is fine. This is a natural thing, that there are roles in life where you do have particular things to do. But the problem becomes, to give a quick example, you're in your role at work and you are a supervisor there. That's your job. You supervise several people in carrying out their tasks. And as it turns out, this day, you've had one of a repeated number of incidents with one of the people you supervise who, hey, they just don't seem to get it. No matter how many times you tell them how to do something, they keep fouling it up. So the job has come to an end and you travel home and you open the door And typically, your spouse would be in the kitchen preparing dinner. And you notice she's sitting on the couch in the living room. She's on the phone, and she's evidently quite upset about something. So she notices you're there and ends her conversation, and she's still in tears. And you go and speak to her, and she's telling you what a terrible, terrible day this was, and this awful event happened. And you're still in your subpersonality as supervisor, and you start telling her what you think she should have done instead. Well, as you can imagine, this is not what your wife needed to hear. She needed to be talking to her partner, her loving spouse, not some instructor, supervisor telling her what she did wrong. That's not the place. So that's, again, subpersonalities, very related to some of the earlier work from William James. And a good part of the work in psychosynthesis, when I talked about developing that well-rounded personality, that would involve becoming aware of the subpersonalities that you may have. And it's almost assuredly so. You must have some, because you must have some role that you play in life. And then again, getting to choose the subpersonality, because in any subpersonality, there's an internal rhyme and reason to why it operates the way it does. And that's useful. It's not something you don't get rid of subpersonalities in psychosynthesis practice. You learn of them and you incorporate them and choose consciously when it's appropriate. So psychosynthesis, looking at the name itself, tells something about what it is. First of all, obviously, it's talking about the psyche, and the methodology used is synthesis. It's one of expansion, growth, and connection, which Assagioli would say is the very same process that life itself uses. Life is a process of growth, expansion, and connection. And synthesis, it combines things. So, those were some good thoughts that we've had to get into. And now, if you like, we can proceed to an exercise involving the personal self. So,
We have about 20 minutes left, Richard, just so you know.
yeah, we can put this away. So we're talking about within you a center of identity, which is uniquely you. And we're describing it as a point of consciousness and will, separate from, distinct from the contents of your consciousness, which could be thoughts, emotions, feelings, bodily sensations. So this exercise is to help give you at least some taste, some experience of what that is. And I think you'll find it's nothing completely new. it's something that we've all experienced, but typically it's a mixed experience, that it's mixed up with the content of consciousness, such that you don't even really notice there is a point of consciousness and will separate from the contents of consciousness. So let's begin. Just sit quietly. You might want to jiggle jaggle or even stand up and take a quick stretch. But get comfortable. And your eyes can be open at this point in the exercise. And just take a look around you and become aware of everything you can see. Excuse me. And see it in as much detail as you can, as clearly and as vividly as you can. See what's around you. You can spend a few more moments doing this. And now close your eyes and just breathe in, breathing out. As you inhale, take in that vivid sense of awareness, the vivid picture that you just saw. And then as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? We can do that again. You can open your eyes if you like and take another look. Try and take in all the detail of what you can see. And now, closing your eyes, breathe in slowly, taking that awareness in to your point of awareness. And as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? And now, still with your eyes closed, we will continue. Imagine that you're drawing a white circle with chalk on a blackboard. Just look at the circle that you've just drawn, a white circle on a blackboard. Be aware of the circle. Study the circle. Get a clear picture of that circle. And then, as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? And still, with your eyes closed, we'll repeat that. You're drawing a white circle with chalk on a blackboard. Just look at the circle. Be aware of it. And then, taking a deep breath as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? Now you can let that circle fade away. And just breathing rhythmically, breathing in, breathing out. Stay with the awareness of yourself as the one who is aware. Really experience being yourself. Get as clear a sense as possible of this. Just take all the time you need to do this. Being aware of yourself as the one who is aware. Okay. You can now let your awareness come back to the room that you're in. As you're ready, you can open your eyes and join us back in our Zoom meeting. That was stage 1, and we can proceed to stage 2, if you like. So again, just sit quietly, comfortably. Look around you so your eyes can be open now. Become aware of what you see in all of its detail, as clearly, vividly as possible. And then closing your eyes, breathe in slowly. As you inhale, take in that awareness. And then exhaling, asking yourself, who is aware? And now your eyes are still closed. Become aware of what you hear. Listen to the sounds or to the silence around you. Listening and being aware of what you can hear. And then taking a deep breath as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? And now, still with your eyes closed, imagine once again you're drawing a white circle with chalk on a blackboard. Look at the circle, be aware of it, bring it within, and then taking a deep breath as you exhale, ask yourself, who is aware? And let that circle fade away now, and breathing rhythmically in and out, stay with the awareness of yourself as the one who is aware. Really experience being yourself. Take some time with this. Try to get as clear a sense as possible for what it's like to be yourself. Become aware of the stability of the self, its permanency. Experience it as the stable state of consciousness that's always reliably there. While all else changes, it remains. It's available always, a source of stability and of clear perception in the midst of change. With the awareness of being your unchanging self, turn your attention to your body. Your body changes. The sensations of your body are different now than they were a few moments ago. They'll be different again a few moments from now. your body itself is different now than it was when you were a child. And it keeps changing as you grow older. But yourself doesn't change. Focus once again on the awareness of being yourself, the one who is aware. And as that unchanging self, become aware of your feelings. Your feelings are also changing all the time. Even the depth with which you feel changes. But yourself doesn't change. And focus once again on being yourself, the one who is aware. And as that unchanging self, become aware of your mind. Your thoughts change with great rapidity. They jump from one idea to another. As you grow, you use different ways of thinking, but yourself, your true nature, doesn't change. Focusing again on being yourself, become aware of your body, your feelings, and your mind. Be aware that you have these three aspects. They are yours. They are your valuable means of expression in the world. And you have the capacity to direct and regulate them at will, because they are not you. You are yourself, the one who is aware. As you continue just breathing in, breathing out, let your focus come back to that breathing, and then to the room that you're in. And slowly, as you're ready, then open your eyes and return to our meeting together. So, everyone here is now officially a practitioner of psychosynthesis.
It
It's
felt like
real.
a form of meditation. And and when I was doing it, I became consciously aware of my desire to write down the image that I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. It was like part of my identity, I think, what I was perceiving. No, I don't know
This
where that would fall into.
this this was an image that came during this, not the image of the circle or the
No,
image
this
of,
was
yeah,
during
this is
the
just something that came
flexion.
in.
Yeah.
Well, any number of things can and will occur. And this is I get what you would call, I guess, a guided meditation, as opposed to other forms where you're just sitting yourself
Right.
doing whatever form it is. This is a guided one. And yeah, images, as as noted earlier in the egg there, those are permeable barriers. And things will go from one field of the unconscious to another. There's things coming at you from all over. And it's a matter of being able to begin to exercise some choices. And the choice is made from that point of consciousness and will. That's where the ability to make the choice comes from, to the extent you can begin to recognize and enter that point, the more you will find the ability to choose the contents of consciousness. It's a voyage, as Assagioli would say, and it's a lifelong voyage. He
Is there a
himself,
process involved, where you would, like there used to be a process to meditate, uh, that was known and exercised. Is there a process to get to this point of, the will and the I sort of converged and
well, the exercise you just did is an exercise designed to bring you in touch with that. And I mean, we could have simply discussed everything that was said in the exercise, right? I could have just spoken that, everybody's eyes open, just as I spoke the biography. But there's a different level of awareness that you come to in what we call meditation. So that's why it's done as a meditative exercise.
I'm wondering,
If,
when you are by yourself, can you implement this by going through asking, or I'm not sure what the process would be.
well,
Where,
you this particular exercise, you could either read it enough to be familiar with it enough that you could take yourself through it. You could also, uh, many of the exercises, I can't say one way or another with this particular one, you might find a video out there on the net with someone reading it. Much like the last exercise I did through the group I'm in with Federation of Christian Ministries. It was an exercise I found on the internet, and the person who was a practitioner at the Psychosynthesis Trust had recorded the entire exercise. So before I presented it to the group, I played that on my TV and sat there as if I were in the original audience. And then he also provided a written transcript, which is what I used to give the exercise. But I think to say more about, you're asking, are there practices? Well, yeah, this is one. There's another exercise called disidentification and identification, similar to what we just did, which dealt with, without saying the words disidentify and identify, you looked at what was around you, tried to picture that and hold that picture, and then the question was asked, who is aware? Who is aware? So that this whole point of consciousness and will is really not some esoteric idea. If you think about it, it's sort of like, well, of course, it has to be that way. Your thoughts change all the time. There's no permanency to your thoughts. Your feelings change, your emotions change. So who is it that's aware of all this? What is that? Who am I that's aware of this? There's something that's not changing. Not changing. That's
Richard, we're about at the end of our hour
Yeah.
and a half. So I want to thank you on behalf of GMU and our people who are here with us. This was very illustrative. You put a lot of time into preparing your presentation. So we thank you. And if anybody wants to continue with you in the next sessions that you planned, there's no charge for the session today, obviously, but there is a charge if we want to go forward. So you can do so just by writing to info@globalministriesuniversity.org, and Mary Acte will send you the link for the payment for the following 3 sessions. So thank you again. My computer went out on me at the beginning. I did not get a chance to really properly introduce you, but you brought up about how I first learned of your work when you did the meditation with FCM. And so that's FCM is a national organization of people involved in various ministries. And you're part of that organization and credentialed by it. And Marina and I are also part of that same organization. So again, I don't know if anybody has any final thoughts, but I hope some of you may be willing to go on further with Richard. You can see how much time he has put into preparing these presentations. So
I appreciated this very, very much, and it was deeply meaningful to me. And so I do want to go ahead and go through with the other sessions. And thank you so much for your time and wonderful wonderful work.
Well, as I've thought, the only way that you can really say you understand something is, can you explain it to somebody else who doesn't know about it? Otherwise, I've met people who are very advanced in their field, and they could explain it to other people who are very advanced in their fields, but they can't figure out how to say this to somebody who doesn't know it yet. So I like to check from time to time, am I capable of explaining this to someone? And
looks like we're going to go on, Richard. So for those who want to be with you, we'll be coming in again at the same time next week at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. East Coast time. So hopefully, thank you for your time and your preparation. And having worked with you in discussing this, I know how much time you've put into it. So thanks so much.
okay, well, thank you all for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Enjoy your voyage.
Thank you.